Okay, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Accommodation Show. This week, I'm joined by the wonderful, the amazing Tyann Hammond. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Bart. I really appreciate it.
It's a real pleasure to have you back on, and there's not many guests that I have come on multiple occasions, but with someone of your caliber and with the amount of knowledge gathering that you do throughout your time in the industry, it's so valuable to have you on the show. So I appreciate you, and thanks for coming back on.
Absolutely. I'm excited about what we're going to talk about today. It is something that no one has done before, so really exciting.
Yeah, so that's right. So, as I was saying before, Tyann's been in the industry for a long time, working for TouchStay. So, TouchStay are your digital guides, but also as a hostess. So, looking after guests on a regular basis. And the great thing with that sort of experience is that you've got your own personal experience when you're dealing with when you're welcoming guests. I was going to say dealing with guests, welcoming guests.
Oh, we do that too.
And then also being a supplier to industry, you also get to see a bit of a breadth of kind of what's going on. How do you feel that you're at an advantage having those two sides to your being?
It's really great. I love it because I get to be in the trenches with everybody. I'm doing it all, and then I have an influence in the tech space about what's being created and what direction the tech is going. So it's really fun to be able to be a part of that and help direct some of that.
And what we were talking about just before we jumped on was how we're in a pretty privileged spot because the industry is quite, I call it nascent. I think we're still kind of in our infancy, kind of figuring out how to walk, but one foot in front of the other. Some people would argue with me and say, "Oh no, we've been around for short-term rentals, vacation rentals have been around for a long time." But I think where what the product is going to ultimately look like to a consumer is still a long way to get there, and that we're very privileged because we're able to kind of help to shape that future.
Absolutely. I mean, for example, way back, was it 2013, 2014, HomeAway said that only 30% of US folks even knew vacation rentals existed. One of those people was my husband when I first met him on Match.com. So, Match.com, he thought I did timeshares. And
Mm,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So then he learned about what vacation rentals are and what it is that I do. Fast forward, we got married 5 years ago, and then I immediately asked him if he wanted to quit his IT job and work with me. So now he's been in the industry as well.
Yeah, wow. Tell me, so if anyone needs a real introduction to Tyann, I think scroll back a few episodes and you'll find our last one, so you'll get that whole history and background. I don't want to go over ground that we've already covered in the past. What I would like you to tell me about just before we get into, oh, actually, let's start off with telling people about our main topic of the day, because I know that you're in a position of it's not a position of power, but a position to get great data. And I know that TouchStay as a company is quite forward thinking in terms of how do we get relevant information that will be serving of short-term rentals, but also to identify potential issues, right? And that's how we, as suppliers, that's what we do. We find problems and we try to fix them. And you guys have a strong community as well that you can go and leverage into. So tell us about today's topic.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about the guest communication study that TouchStay did this past summer. Now, the guest communication study actually came about back in 2020. Get my years right. This is 2024. So it'd be 2022 Vacation Rental World Summit. We were sitting there, and in the conference, it seemed like the number one question was, do guests enjoy or prefer a face-to-face check-in or a remote check-in where they check in on their own? And this is a world summit, it's in Europe, and a lot of people are saying, oh no, they want to be greeted. Other people are saying no, they want to be left alone. So Andy McNulty, the founder of TouchStay, he's like, you know what, let's just ask the travelers. And in doing that too, I was like, hey, let's also ask them about different communication preferences, because I have run my business on the gut feeling that the more communication and quality communication that I send to my guests, the better it develops the relationship and the rapport with my guest, and they come back and I get better reviews. And this has all just been a gut feeling to me. So Andy's like, okay, we're going to put that into it. And so we created this study and asked these questions of 2024 guests who in the US who have traveled in vacation rentals. So this isn't even asking our community. This is a third party survey resource that we used. We paid them
Mm.
to do it, and they went out and did the survey for us and got
Did you guys use MyGov? Was that who it
my
was?
yeah, that's who it is, my
Yeah.
gov. hmm
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We had them do it for us, and the results are spot on, totally reinforce exactly what my gut feeling was, what
Mhm.
I have been doing. And it also answered the question of, do guests prefer a face-to-face greeter check-in or a remote check-in? So that was really great to finally get the answer to that question. And who knows, maybe it'll change by next year, because this is definitely the
Ah.
first of many. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to say. A lot of these surveys, consumer sentiment can change, and it can change at the flip of a coin. One day they prefer one thing, one the next day they prefer another, and a lot of it's actually in the language that we or the way that we ask the question that we can get different answers. But nevertheless, uh, getting started with this sort of survey, these sort of surveys and research can be incredibly empowering, because we are seeking to deliver a better guest experience. And the reason why we want a better guest experience is because we want the guests to return, but we also want positive reviews. If we get very positive reviews, then we rank higher on all of the OTAs, because the OTAs know that you're doing things well, and therefore, and if you're priced correctly, and therefore they want to drive traffic to you, because then they know that their customers are going to get a good experience. So it all kind of ties in together. So if we can get these parts of our business correct, then we can get better reviews, better scores, and be more profitable, right?
Exactly. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, awesome. So I guess let's kick into it. So what are the sort of some of the key points that you think would be most valuable to everybody?
So, one of the things I found really interesting is when we asked the travelers, how many communications do you remember receiving from the host or property manager? It was 60% of them said they remember receiving only one or two messages. And then 20% of them said they don't remember receiving anything, or they just flat out didn't receive anything.
Mm.
So, 80% of travelers received communications information that was forgettable. So that means they don't even remember who they booked with. They don't remember you. They don't remember anything about that. And quite frankly, it's looks at this like, wait, we're in hospitality. And then on top of that, the majority of folks said they didn't feel very well cared for either. And that was really disappointing, because again, we're in hospitality. Now, when we also compared this then to how when more messages were sent. And what was really cool to see is that the sweet spot was actually 3 to 5 messages. Those folks said they felt the most cared for out of all. But
Go
once
on.
you hit the 6 or more messages to the guest, other things increase. For example, they found 15% more folks found more things to do. And when they found more things to do, that means they spent more money. So they purchased add ons. And then on top of that, 40% of those said, hey, we booked more nights because of that. So, very much direct correlation to the more messages you send that are quality messages, the better the guest feels cared for, meaning they're leaving better reviews, higher reviews, and they're spending more money with you.
Wow, that I mean that should be a bit of a game changer for everybody straight away. The question itself, was it based on one visit, or was it based on a range of visits to different providers?
I think we asked them to think about one visit to a vacation rental. So specifically, we asked vacation rental. So if they answered, oh, we stayed at a hotel or we stayed at a bed and breakfast, then those we did disqualify because we wanted to focus on vacation rentals for this communication study.
And do you know whether it was just one region or different regions that you were surveying?
It was in the whole United States. So
Oh, cool. Okay,
yeah,
good.
yeah, and then, so
Yeah.
eventually we'll go worldwide, but for this first one, we focused on the U.S.
Yeah, and I think that's important. Look, I haven't done that many surveys, but we do surveys every week in our Facebook group. But in terms of these sorts of, I guess it's a bit you're trying to get the right sort of data, and if you go across different countries, then you can find that the data starts to get skewed based on country, and people have different preferences and different ways of communicating, be it on WhatsApp or email or text message. So
Funnily enough,
being more,
this, I'll
sorry.
say, Bart, what you just mentioned is the preference of types of communication. That's actually one of the questions we asked on the study.
And what was it in the US? What was the
So
now that
we
we're
asked,
here?
yeah, so we asked them not only what was your preference of type of communication, but we correlated that with what point in the guest's journey they wanted that type of communication. So before arrival, they heavily wanted emails. And for the younger folks, they also wanted the OTA or online travel agent in the in-app messaging. So that was very heavy before arrival. Then after they arrived, while they're in their stay, they wanted text messages, and that was pretty much across the board, except for the 55 and olders who actually wanted a phone call. And then
Ha.
after
Okay.
the stay, they wanted to go back to the emails.
Yeah. And okay, a phone call. So that's the and then uh, I guess from your sample size, you wouldn't find many that would actually receive a phone call and be able to correlate that with any sort of increased spend or increased satisfaction.
I mean, well, for one, I can give a personal anecdote. For our Branson family retreats, we actually call every single guest after arrival because we know that the person spending the money is most usually that 55 and plus demographic.
Yeah. Right. And then you guys don't see your guests face to face when
Nope.
they arrive.
No, we don't.
So therefore, that part of the process is incredibly important. It feels a little bit more personal, and that puts a person behind the brand. Um, Amazing. And then so we're also saying that if we send more messages, we increase the trust. We're saying that the sweet spot is between 3 and 5, but then if we go more, then we can increase the spend as well. The spend part of it, were there specific questions around that?
Yeah, we had asked them specifically about purchasing upsells, and then again specifically about adding nights. So we, split those up so that we could see. And there's very detailed percentages on the guest communication study. So these percentages, I'm just rounding for easier speaking.
Sure.
But purchasing upsells, it was 20% of folks said they purchased upsells when they were received 6 or more messages. And then they booked more nights. That was 40% of people compared
Wow.
to 1 to 2 messages. So massive increase there.
And but we don't know whether it's the nature of the communication. I mean, we assume that if they're going to get more messages, then those extra messages will be laced with the extra upsells, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Um, wow. Okay. And then tell me about quality of communication. So that's another thing that's important because from my perspective, if I get 6, 7 messages, I just don't want them. I think it's too much. I think like, why are you hassling me again? I've got so many emails and so many other things to look after. And then also, is it relevant? Like do I
Hmm.
really? I don't need a car hire. Thank you very much. I've sorted that part out.
So
How
a
do
lot of
we go on?
Yeah, so a lot of it has to do. knowing who your guest is. So understanding your guest, what their needs are, what their wants are, what questions they're going to be asking, and what the timing is of their asking those questions. And you can find this out just by looking at your history of questions from guests and going through your messages and looking at what it is that they're asking you, who it is that they say they are, what they're doing. Recall those conversations with them, and then start noting all of this data, all of this information, because then once you'll start to see a pattern. And so, for instance, I found that my guests were asking about directions, about 10 days before arrival. So what I started to do was send an email specifically about directions 14 days before arrival. And I would also send an automatic text that morning too, to say, hey, I just sent you email directions. Let me know if you don't get it, or check your spam box, because a lot of times information goes to a spam box. So right there, Bart, that's two things, and it's quality and it's important. So the big thing with quality communications is making sure it's not too much, because when it's TLDR, too long, didn't read, that's going to be just as bad as not giving them any information at all, because folks are like, hey, I'm not even going to look at this. There's way too much information and they can't consume it very well either.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And it's so tempting to keep adding more and more and more because you just want to say everything rather than having multiple concise messages across a timeline.
Exactly. So precise, 1 to 2 points of information. And then the great thing, what I do myself is I send my guests to my digital guidebook. It's a TouchStay digital guidebook, but there's also different ways you can put out information if you're not ready to do something like that. A PDF that you can make through Canva, but there's all types of different options for that. But the thing is you say, hey, we're going to send you information XYZ at XYZ time, and setting those expectations. I know you just said, hey, I hate getting all kinds of, different little bits and pieces. 6 and 7 seems like a lot. Bart, I actually touch my guests an average of 25 times before they arrive,
Well,
and they love it. It's because I know my guest, and I know exactly what they need, when they need it, what type of guest it is, and then they feel prepared because they know I'm prepared for them, that I'm going to welcome them. And it's so much, guests stay on my email list. I had one stay on it for over 12 years because of the first experience they had with us, and they knew they wanted to repeat that when it was another special occasion. So
wow.
it's really important to know who your guest is and then tailor your communications exactly to that.
Uh, I want to pick up on the know who your guest is. And by the way, 12 years on a mailing list is incredible. The know who your guest is, the personalization part is something that a lot of companies are focusing on and talking about. I did a webinar yesterday and they were talking about personalization and getting guest data from multiple sources and then using that to then be able to tailor a solution or a product to them. What was fascinating is that the presentation that I had watched, it was by one of the leaders in the industry, a company that's doing it really well, and it was still broken. It was still really clunky to get that information from one source, put it into another one, super complicated, and really understanding that guest and even creating prompts and making it all work and stitch together. It was still quite manual, and it will get there, but it wasn't quite there yet. Needless to say, it's very clear that we will get to a stage where that personalization uh, becomes critical for the experience, and gathering the guest data will be critical for the experience. Did you do anything about personalization within the survey, or any touch any of those kind of topics?
We didn't go as far as personalization in the survey, no.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe for the next one as
Yep.
well, because
Maybe the
I
next
think it would
one.
be also. I guess the other interesting thing for me is demographics, just really understanding or being able to deep dive into what age groups are more likely to want different information. As you said, by what kind of type of messaging that will vary based on demographic, maybe even where someone's from, as opposed to, like even regionally within the US. Are there any parts of the survey that we haven't talked about yet?
Yeah. So one of the things we also asked them was, what is it that most influences you to leave a positive review?
Okay.
And it was amazing that, and I'm going to tell you this exactly, it was 69.3% of respondents chose something to do with communications.
Hmm.
So that's someone, they said, my host communicates easily with me, and I felt it was easy to talk to them. My host gives me great information about the area and about the property. And then also, I felt that the host is easily accessible if I have any questions. It was just incredible. At 69.3% of folks said some type of communication most affected them leaving a positive review.
I think that's particularly so. When we were talking before as well, we were talking about sort of two different categories. So you've got a property management company, then you've got people that are running their own small business. They might have one or two Airbnbs. Probably a lot more manageable in terms of the communication if we're talking about being readily accessible. Actually, if it's your small business, your mom and dad operator, you can pretty much pick up the phone. It's probably a lot easier than if we're working at scale where we've got maybe 200 or 300 properties, 1,000 properties. We've got so many guests checking in, and to have the guest really feel that they're looked after in that way, and they can just call, and it's not, they're really getting in touch with someone that understands that local property. There's probably a lot of room for work there, and if not, an opportunity to get things right.
Mhm, absolutely. And, yes, I'm a small property manager. We have two brands, 24 properties now. But I started with just a single property way back in 2007. So, I don't plan to get up to that 500,000 property level, of course. And I plan to stay small, very boutique, very curated. But the thing is we run it with so few people, and the key is the communication and scaling that as we add properties. And the thing is we figured out, because we know our guests, and when they ask questions, the type of questions, what kind of information they want, what do they need, and then we answer those questions before they ask them. So
Mhm.
dripping that information at the right time with the right method, and they feel we're taking care of them, they feel we're accessible, and all of that. And it reduces the amount of times that they have to communicate and ask us questions because we're already giving all that information at the right points.
And I think there's also the part where the guest needs to know that the answers are there.
Yep.
Quite often we'll look in a hotel guide, and then we won't have the answer. Quite often we'll look on a website and the answer isn't there, and it's like, well, this is a pain. Like, we don't use the guides on the website, so we go to the live support to try to get the answer there. And if we don't get that, then we're just trying to find the quickest way to get the answer to our particular question. And uh, I stayed with one of our good friends and, I guess, clients in Tasmania last year, and they were more of a kind of a boutique hotel, but with no staff on site. And they created a very effective journey in terms of communicating that there's no one on site, why it's of benefit to the guest that there's nobody on site. They just want to leave you alone and let you enjoy the space. And then the way that they had written the guides, then it was very, very clear that all the information you need is in there, and they've spent a lot of time curating that. And they actually say it. They say, we've spent a lot of time putting this together to make sure that everything is answered. If you've got, you can still call us if you've got any problems, but just give it a go. There's a good chance the answers are in the guide.
Exactly. And a lot of people say, well, my guests don't read anything. When they book, they don't even read anything. So why would they look at anything I send them after they book? But the key is you have to tell them what is in there, and you're going to focus on the exact main questions they want. So for my guests, I know the first questions they're going to ask is, what's the Wi-Fi? Where's the closest grocery stores? And where do I get the best prices on the show and attraction tickets? So my very next email after the confirmation of booking says exactly that. hey, we have spent some time, a lot of time putting together all the information you're going to need, including your big questions of one, two, three, and here's the link to go look at that. And then we're training them and prepping them throughout that time that they're prepping for their vacation, and we're dripping that information to them and showing them this is where it's at. This is where the hot tub information is. This is where the charcuterie place is that you can get something ready for you on arrival. This is where the theme park is. It's all those different things dripped at the right time.
Okay. Wow. Wow. Okay. So better reviews is what we where we came to there. Are there any other bits in the survey that we're covering off, and how many more do we have? Because I want to be mindful of time, make sure that we get through whatever we need to get through. Because I don't know what you've got on your piece of paper.
Honestly, Bart, there is so much more in there. So I, rather than trying to bite off more of it, how about we instead send everybody to go grab the guest communication study? It's a free download. You can absolutely take a look at it. Very well written with information around each data point to help you understand it.
Yeah, awesome. So we'll put that link in the show notes. So if you want to get access to that, you can definitely get access to that. What are your biggest takeaways from the survey overall?
Biggest is my validation of how I've been communicating with my guests is highly effective, and it's something it's not just a gut feeling anymore. It's I've been validated that here's the data to support what I have been doing all along, and I love that for me personally, but also it's the data that shows, hey, this is how we can incrementally do better as hospitality providers, as operators, how we can meet the guests' needs and wants and then exceed them, simply by doing more quality communications in the way that the guest wants. And those are simple little things that all of us can do, no matter if we have one property or 1,000 properties. It's, those little tiny steps, and we can increase the happiness across the world.
And do you think I like that statement? Uh, do you think this survey was very conscious of trying to find people that had stayed in a vacation rental or short term rental? I imagine that if we transpose the same thing and we went to hotels in terms of number of communication points, depending on whether it's face to face or not face to face. By the way, you never answered that one. What people prefer, whether it's face to face or
I was
not.
waiting for you to notice that.
Yeah, that was going to come out. So,
Yep, the survey says they wanted remote check-in. They do not want face-to-face.
what are the numbers?
I don't remember off the top of my head. So go see the communication study.
I love it. And then just yeah, so that last point, the if we think about other forms of accommodation, be it a campsite, be it a motel, hotel, do you think? I mean, I imagine the same learnings would apply across there. Do you guys intend to do a survey in that space? What do you think will come of it?
Yeah, I mean, we're every year our plan is to finesse the survey, and then getting into different niches. I don't know what the plan is there. I would hope so, but honestly, if I'm going to follow my gut feeling, which it's been right so far on this part, is it not only applies to hotels, bed and breakfast, glamping, campsites, but it applies to all areas of business, period. Whether you're a freelancer with customers, whether you're a dental office, whether you're a tourism office, it doesn't matter. The better and more quality communications that are very much pertaining to who your client, your customer, who your guest is the higher higher feeling they'll have that you are taking care of them and you're serving them hospitality, and it's going to end up with better reviews and more money coming in. You'll be more profitable.
Love it. Love it. Tyann, thank you so much for coming on.
Yep, you're
I
welcome.
like to keep these episodes short and sweet. And I think that this is really great because, one, we're providing a resource for people, or you guys are, that will help people kind of make some decisions about how they run things. I love to see that this isn't just an idea that you're peddling. It's actually you're making it more concrete and giving it actual data that can back up some of the things that you're saying. I'm looking forward to seeing how consumers change over time, especially as technology changes and their expectations change as well. Because there's a bit of that at play as well as what do people actually want? Because sometimes you don't know what you want until you receive it. Like, oh, I only want one message, but actually, or two messages. Actually, I would prefer to have 10 because I'm so forgetful. That sort of stuff. So it's a really interesting space. I'm glad that you're the queen of it and that you're helping us navigate it.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Bart.
Really appreciate you, folks. If you are listening to this on the podcast, make sure you leave us a review, give us some of those stars. If you're on YouTube, then give us a like, share it around, and leave your comments below. Thank you so much. Take care and have a good day.